Nancy Pelosi just got a new challenger. Now, of course, facing anger over her refusal to champion progressive policy, for example, like Medicare for All, and taking money from giant corporations, Pelosi is now facing a primary challenger from the left, from San Francisco attorney Stephen Jaffe, or Jaffe. I'm not sure which, so I apologize if you're listening. Now, I'm just going to call him Jaffe, is a 71-year-old San Francisco employment attorney, and he is also a lifelong Democrat. Now, he's a lifelong Democrat, but he's one of the old ones. He's one of the FDR Democrats, because he says he supported Bernie Sanders during the primary, even volunteering and campaigning for Sanders back in Nevada. When interviewed by the LA Times, he said, quote, "Yeah, I was a pretty hardcore Bernie supporter." That's what we like. All right, great. Now, Jeff was one of the two attorneys who filed for an injunction on behalf of Bernie Sanders supporters in the California primary. Now, he requested revokes and an extension of the voter registration deadline. Now, unfortunately, that deadline was denied, and of course, that was the primary where it was famously called way before the counting was done. So that was some super shady shit. Like, oh no, California, man. California, Hillary won. I mean, we're not even done counting, but Hillary definitely won. Well, you know, when you do that in the middle of a vote, because people were still voting in California, well, you tend to depress turnout. Well, if Hillary won, why am I going to go out and vote? It's not going to matter. And look, maybe Hillary Clinton would have won anyway. Well, she did win. But anyway, it was shady. Okay, it was some shady shit. Now, Jaffe also told the LA Times that he was devastated by Sanders' loss to Hillary Clinton in the primary. You and me, buddy. You and me both. In fact, I think the whole country at this point is devastated. Now, he also said that Sanders, in part, inspired him to run for office. So, what does he believe in? What are some of his policies? Well, unlike Pelosi, he does support Medicare for all, single-payer health care. Now, he also went on to criticize Pelosi for raising money from corporations and giant special interests. Now, so if this guy wants to take money out of politics, which seemingly he seemingly wants to, well, then we could have a winner. I mean, that is an incredibly popular issue, according to a 2014 New York Times CBS poll, and numerous ones following it and like it. 84% of Americans think money has too much influence on our political system. 80% of Republicans, 80% of Republicans, 90% of Democrats, and 84% of independents think money has way too much influence on our system. Furthermore, 39% want to see fundamental changes in the way people fund campaigns, and 46% want to see the system torn down and completely rebuilt. Because believe it or not, that system, money in politics, that gives us people like Trump. But how, Jeff? How does money in politics get you Trump when Hillary Clinton first raised a lot more money, twice as much money, spent twice as much money as Donald Trump in the election? Well, that doesn't make sense, Jeff. Explain this to me. Well, let me explain. It's not just about how much money was raised, but it's the perception. Now, I talked about that recent poll with Obama-Trump voters, right? Now, how most of them have the perception that the Democrats, for the most part, the Democrats no longer represent Americans. They represent the top 1%, the special interests, and essentially the political parties. Well, who ends up funding the parties? Well, big money, giant corporations. Who funds the politicians? Big money, giant corporations. Who gives that money? Again, giant corporations. Special interests. Look, the American people aren't stupid, okay? They know on a fundamental level that when they are being screwed. Now, of course, someone like Trump, well, they can look at that and they can exploit that and say, "Oh, look at all that big money. I can screw people over. I can get their vote by telling them how other people are screwing them over." And of course, he ran as a candidate the so-called candidate that could not be bought. Now, if anything, Donald Trump was built by that system. Because anybody who is not a supposed billionaire like he is can't run, or has to take money from somewhere, some other means of making money. They're gonna kiss ass to the or to the corporations, to the lobbyists, or they're gonna lose. Or, of course, they can do what Bernie Sanders did and raise money directly from the people, which is like a crazy, crazy idea that the Democratic Party seems to want to ignore. Like, no, it's so much easier to go and beg money from corporations. And besides, we already represent the corporations. We don't really want to go and represent the people. So that's how that works out. Now, again, Sanders, great example of taking it from the people. Clinton took it from the corporations. Donald Trump at first spent some of his own money, and then later on took corporate and super PAC money. But look, that perception that he got during the primary, well, look, it's that perception was still, I can't be bought. And he ran with that, and he was very successful with that. And Clinton was the face of the establishment, the corporate establishment. Now, she was essentially cut off from the people. She represented the corporation. She didn't have a sweeping economic vision of change. Look, her campaign was a mess. It was a disaster. It was sad. And it's a good example of how you not run a campaign. Now, Jaffe is hoping to make some waves by doing the opposite of that, by supporting progressive policy and actually going after people who take corporate money, people who embody the establishment. And he thinks on that he's got a pretty good chance. Quote, I know that Ms. Pelosi's strategy has been to essentially ignore anyone who has challenged her. Oh boy, does that sound familiar. But he says, I'll anticipate that she'll have a more difficult time doing that with my candidacy, just like with Bernie Sanders, of course, who they tried to ignore. But eventually it got to the point where they couldn't. Now, he says that if local progressive activists can propel him to a runoff with Pelosi, he says, I have quite a realistic chance of winning. There is a rumbling, a wave of activism here by people who have never really stepped forward before. Interesting. Look, if people do step up and support him, who knows what will happen? I think there are some parallels here. This kind of reminds me of the race of Eric Cantor versus Dave Brat. Now, look, Dave Brat actually ran a very populist, from the right campaign. You know how he did so? Because he ran against the banks. And he ran against the banks in a very conservative district, because it turns out that just like progressives and independents and liberals, turns out conservatives also really don't like the banks because they've been screwing us over. And Wall Street, etc., etc. So he ran on that, and he won his primary. He actually beat Eric Cantor in this amazing upset. It was crazy. Now, the whole lesson of that is that the primaries do work. Not all the time, but it works a lot better if you actually go out there and try. So I think this is one of the very interesting primary races to watch. There are many, many others where Bernie-crats are actually making headway and challenging people, and there's going to be a lot more going into 2018. So, look, if you live in this district, take a look at this guy, this Stephen Jaffe, Jaffe. I'll post a link to the article in the description of this video, so you can take a look at him, so you can find him, and see if you're in that area, if you want to support him, if you want to volunteer for him. Because, again, if he's going to try and take down Pelosi, well, he's going to need your help to do it. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.